The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives is a federal law enforcement organization within the United States Department of Justice. Its responsibilities include the investigation and prevention of federal offenses involving the unlawful use, manufacture, and possession of firearms and explosives, acts of arson and bombings, and illegal trafficking of alcohol and tobacco products. The ATF also regulates via licensing the sale, possession, and transportation of firearms, ammunition, and explosives in interstate commerce. Many of ATF's activities are carried out in conjunction with task forces made up of state and local law enforcement offices, such as Project Safe Neighborhoods. ATF operates a unique fire research laboratory in Beltsville, Maryland, where full-scale mock-ups of criminal arson can be reconstructed. The agency is led by Thomas E. Brandon, Acting Director, and Ronald B. Turk, Acting Deputy Director. ATF has 4,770 employees, and an annual budget of $1.15 billion. History. The ATF was formerly part of the United States Department of the Treasury. Having been formed in 1886 is the Revenue Laboratory, within the Treasury Department's Bureau of Internal Revenue. The history of ATF can be subsequently traced to the time of the Revenuers or Reveneurs, and the Bureau of Prohibition, which was formed as a unit of the Bureau of Internal Revenue in 1920. It was made an independent agency within the Treasury Department in 1927, was transferred to the Justice Department in 1930, and became, briefly, a division of the FBI in 1933. When the Volstead Act, which established prohibition in the United States, was repealed in December 1933, the unit was transferred from the Department of Justice back to the Department of the Treasury, where it became the alcohol tax unit of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Special Agent Elliot Ness and several members of the Untouchables, who had worked for the Prohibition Bureau while the Volstead Act was still in force, were transferred to the ATU. In 1942, responsibility for enforcing federal firearms laws was given to the ATU. In the early 1950s, the Bureau of Internal Revenue was renamed Internal Revenue Service, and the ATU was given the additional responsibility of enforcing federal tobacco tax laws. At this time, the name of the ATU was changed to the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax Division. In 1968, with the passage of the Gun Control Act, the agency changed its name again, this time to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division of the IRS, and first began to be referred to by the initials ATF. In Title C of the Organized Crime Control Act of 1970, Congress enacted the Explosives Control Act, 18 U.S.C.A. Chapter 40, which provided for close regulation of the explosives industry and designated certain arsons and bombings as federal crimes. The Secretary of the Treasury was made responsible for administering the regulatory aspects of the new law, and was given jurisdiction over criminal violations relating to the regulatory controls. These responsibilities were delegated to the ATF division of the IRS. The Secretary and the Attorney General were given concurrent jurisdiction over arson and bombing offenses. Pub. L. 91-452, 84 Stat. 922, October 15, 1970. In 1972, ATF was established as a separate bureau within the Treasury Department when Treasury Department Order 221, effective July 1, 1972, transferred the responsibilities of the ATF division of the IRS to the new Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Rex D. Davis oversaw the transition, becoming the Bureau's first director, having headed the division since 1970. During his tenure, Davis shepherded the organization into a new era where federal firearms and explosives laws addressing violent crime became the primary mission of the agency. However, taxation and other alcohol issues remained priorities as ATF collected billions of dollars in alcohol and tobacco taxes, and undertook major revisions of the federal wine labeling regulations relating to use of appellations of origin and varietal designations on wine labels. In the wake of the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, on September 11, 2001, President George W. Bush signed into law the Homeland Security Act of 2002. In addition to the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the law shifted ATF from the Department of the Treasury to the Department of Justice. The agency name was changed to Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. However, the agency still was referred to as the ATF for all purposes. Additionally, the task of collection of federal tax revenue derived from the production of tobacco and alcohol products and the regulatory function related to protecting the public in issues related to the production of alcohol, previously handled by the Bureau of Internal Revenue as well as by ATF, was transferred to the newly established Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, which remained within the Treasury Department. These changes took effect January 24, 2003. ATF and violent crime. Since 2001, ATF agents have recommended over 10,000 felons every year for federal prosecution for firearms possession just through the Project Safe Neighborhoods framework. In PSN's first year, 2001-2002, over 7,700 of these cases resulted in convictions with an average sentence of over 5 years per defendant. This number had risen to over 12,000 prosecutions in FY 2007. The annual FBI Uniform Crime Report demonstrated that throughout the decade of 2001 to 2010, the reduction of violent crime offenses in United States districts with dedicated Project Safe Neighborhood agents and United States attorneys far outperformed the national average. Generally, about 90% of the cases referred by ATF for prosecution each year are for firearms, violent crime, and narcotics offenses. Through the first half of 2011, ATF had recommended 5,203 cases for prosecution. This yields an average of 5.0 cases per agent per year. For comparison, the FBI had recommended 8,819 cases for prosecution, for an average of 1.2 cases per agent per year. Personnel. ATF, as a bureau, consists of several different groups that each have their own respective role, commanded by a director. Special agents are empowered to conduct criminal investigations, defend the United States against international and domestic terrorism, and work with state and local police officers to reduce violent crime on a national level. ATF special agents have some of the broadest authority of any federal agency. 18 U.S.C. 3051 empowers them to enforce any statute in the United States Code. Specifically, ATF special agents have lead investigative authority on any federal crime committed with a firearm or explosive, as well as investigative authority over regulatory referrals and cigarette smuggling. ATF special agents also often enforce violations of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act, and have the statutory authority to conduct narcotics cases independently of the Drug Enforcement Administration, Homeland Security investigations, or any other agency. All ATF special agents require a top-secret security clearance, and in many instances, need a higher-level TS/PSI clearance. In order to get a security clearance, all potential ATF special agents must pass a detailed series of single-scope background investigations. ATF special agents consistently rank at the top or near the top of all federal agencies in cases referred for prosecution, arrests made, and average time per defendant on an annual basis. Special agents currently comprise around 2,400 of the agency, approximately 5,000 personnel. ATF investigators are charged with regulating the gun and explosive industry. These men and women are not armed law enforcement officers but have administrative authority to search and conduct inspections, as well as to recommend revocation and/or non-renewal of federal firearms licenses to licensees who are in violation of federal firearms laws and regulations. The remainder of the Bureau is personnel in various staff and support roles, from office administrative assistants to intelligence analysts, forensic scientists, legal counsel, and technical specialists. Additionally, ATF relies heavily on state and local task force officers to supplement the special agents and who are not officially part of the ATF roster. Firearms. Members of ATF special agent ranks are issued the Glock 22 or the Glock 27 as their primary duty weapon and are trained in the use of, and issued, certain long arms. The ATF Special Response Team is armed with Colt M4 assault rifles and other firearms. Field divisions. The ATF has several field offices across the nation in major cities. Those cities are Atlanta, Georgia; Baltimore, Maryland; Boston, Massachusetts; Charlotte, North Carolina; Chicago, Illinois; Columbus, Ohio; Dallas, Texas; Denver, Colorado; Detroit, Michigan; Houston, Texas; Kansas City; Los Angeles, California; Louisville, Kentucky; Miami, Florida; Nashville, Tennessee; Newark, New Jersey; New Orleans, Louisiana; New York; Philadelphia, Pennsylvania; Phoenix, AZ; San Francisco, California; Seattle, Washington; St. Paul, MN; Tampa, Florida; Washington, D.C. Also, there are field offices in different countries such as Canada, Mexico, El Salvador, Colombia, Iraq, and in the Caribbean. Regulation of firearms. ATF is responsible for regulating firearm commerce in the United States. The Bureau issues federal firearms licenses to sellers, and conducts firearms licensee inspections. The Bureau is also involved in programs aimed at reducing gun violence in the United States, by targeting and arresting violent offenders who unlawfully possess firearms. ATF was also involved with the Youth Crime Gun Interdiction Initiative, which expanded tracing of firearms recovered by law enforcement, and the ongoing Comprehensive Crime Gun Tracing Initiative. ATF also provides support to state and local investigators, through the National Integrated Ballistic Identification Network program. Firearms tracing. ATF's Comprehensive Crime Gun Tracing Initiative is the largest operation of its kind in the world. In FY07, ATF's National Tracing Center processed over 285,000 trace requests on guns for over 6,000 law enforcement agencies in 50 countries. ATF uses a web-based system, known as eTrace, that provides law enforcement agencies with the capability to securely and electronically send trace requests, receive trace results, and conduct basic trace analysis in real time. Over 2,000 agencies and more than 17,000 individuals currently use eTrace, including over 33 foreign law enforcement agencies. Gun tracing provides information to federal, state, local and foreign law enforcement agencies on the history of a firearm from the manufacturer, through the distribution chain, to the first retail purchaser. This information is used to link suspects to firearms in criminal investigations, identify potential traffickers, and detect in-state, interstate, and international patterns in the sources and types of crime guns. Firearms ballistic tracing. ATF provides investigative support to its partners through the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, which allows federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to image and compare crime gun evidence. NIBIN currently has 203 sites. In FY07, NIBIN's 174 partner agencies imaged more than 183,000 bullets and casings into the database. resulting in over 5,200 matches that provided investigative leads. Regulation of explosives. With the passage of the Organized Crime Control Act in 1970, ATF took over the regulation of explosives in the United States, as well as prosecution of persons engaged in criminal acts involving explosives. One of the most notable investigations successfully conducted by ATF agents was the tracing of the car used in the World Trade Center 1993 bombings, which led to the arrest of persons involved in the conspiracy. ATF also enforces provisions of the Safe Explosives Act, passed after 9/11 to restrict the use, possession of explosives without a federal license to use them. ATF is considered to be the leading federal agency in most bombings that occur within the U.S., with exception to bombings related to international terrorism. ATF currently trains the U.S. military in evidence recovery procedures after a bombing. All ATF agents are trained in post-blast investigation. However, ATF maintains a cadre of approximately 150 highly trained explosive experts known as Certified Explosive Specialists. ATF, say agents are trained as experts regarding improvised explosive devices, as well as commercial explosives. ATF agents work closely with state and local bomb disposal units within the United States. The remit of the BATFE is found in 18 U.S.C. Chapter 40. To quote in Part 841, definitions as used in this chapter: explosive materials means explosives, blasting agents, and detonators, except for the purposes of subsections, and of Section 844 of this title. Explosives means any chemical compound, mixture, or device, the primary or common purpose of which is to function by explosion. The term includes, but is not limited to, dynamite and other high explosives, black powder, pellet powder, initiating explosives, detonators, safe diffusers, squibs, detonating cord, igniter cord, and igniters. The Attorney General shall publish and revise at least annually in the Federal Register a list of these and any additional explosives which he determines to be within the coverage of this chapter. For the purposes of subsections, and of Section 844 of this title, the term explosive is defined in subsection of such Section 844, which states, for the purposes of subsections, and of this section and Section 842, the term explosive means gunpowders, powders used for blasting, all forms of high explosives, blasting materials, fuses, detonators, and other detonating agents, smokeless powders, other explosive or incendiary devices within the meaning of paragraph of Section 232 of this title, and any chemical compounds, mechanical mixture, or device that contains any oxidizing and combustible units, or other ingredients, in such proportions, quantities, or packing that ignition by fire, by friction, by concussion, by percussion, or by detonation of the compound, mixture, or device or any part thereof may cause an explosion. An explosion must be present in the operation of the material, compound, device or system to comply with the requirement for regulation at all. Many of the items they arbitrarily regulate do not meet these definitions.